Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today, we'll look at another horrific instance with you. Today, we'll be at the state that covers about 3/4 of the island of Haiti. This magnificent country attracts travelers from all over the world with the opportunity to rest on snow-white beaches that appear to have descended from advertising brochures, to touch nature that has been nearly undisturbed by man, to taste the unique local cuisine, and of course, it is the Dominican Republic. Our journey begins at the Azure coast, one of the Dominican Republic's most popular beaches. A black Honda Accord pulled into a parking space near the beach. Music was playing gently in the car. 2 men and 3 women were excitedly discussing broad subjects. They appeared to be longtime friends who had gotten together for an enjoyable day. All the passengers got out of the car and walked casually towards the water. A mature man approached one of the girls and took her hand. He whispered something into her ear, and she said to her pals that she would return later. In the evening, the beach was nearly deserted, making an ideal location for a rendezvous and seclusion. They hurriedly got into the car and talked for a while. The man stroked her long hair and touched her large lips, which, like a magnet, drew his kisses. A few hours after her walk, the girl came home and went to bed. Her mother realized the next morning that her daughter had not shown up for breakfast. She walked to her daughter's room and pounded on the door, thinking the sound would wake her up, but she was met with stillness. The woman entered the room and shouted. When the girl screamed, her father dashed in. A dreadful picture appeared in front of the parents. The entire bed was covered in blood, and their daughter lay in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor. She had died. The couple's legs appeared to give out, but the father mustered the courage to phone the police. Around 8 a.m., police arrived at the scene, searched the girl's room, and interviewed her parent. The body was sent to the National Institute for Forensic Medical Examination to determine the cause of death. The parents sobbed, wondering what had happened to their daughter at home at night. However, the actions that led up to this tragedy occurred much earlier and were unnoticed by the parents. Today's narrative will be about an impossible love between a grown man and a small girl. Esmeralda Riches, 16, will take the role. Esmeralda Riches Martinez was born on August 23, 2006, in the province of El Altagracia, to restaurant proprietors Alejo Riscosti and Isabel Martinez Riches. She was up and loving home and had an elder sister with whom she was really friendly. Esmeralda grew into a beautiful and intelligent young woman. She enjoyed singing and dancing, and she was proud to show off her unique skills in social media videos. Esmeralda was in her senior year of high school in 2023 with plans to attend university. She was usually surrounded by friends because the girl's upbeat personality drew not only her peers to her. John Kelly Martinez, 35, was one of Esmeralda's closest pals. John Kelly entered the public education system after completing a competitive teacher's exam, was undergoing new teacher induction, and was still on 1-year probation. The students liked the new instructor because he treated them like friends and took them on regular outings away from school. Despite the fact that John was married to another teacher and had 2 daughters, he spent most of his leisure time with his students. For a long time, the teacher worked hard to establish confidence with them before entrusting them to him. They were mostly brilliant and attractive students, like Esmeralda. The evening walk on February 12, 2023, was an entirely routine meeting between a teacher and female pupils outside of school. Esmeralda was the final person John Kelly picked up that evening. He followed her inside the house. He introduced himself as a teacher and offered to bring her home. The group of 2 adult men and 3 young female students then drove to the beach in Teacher Kelly's automobile. Everyone save John Kelly, and Esmeralda got out of the automobile after it came to a stop. John and Esmeralda were alone for a while, but then joined the fun. They'd had a couple beers and took a brief walk down the beach. Esmeralda suddenly felt nauseous. The girl began bleeding. The walk had to be cut short, and she had to be transported back home. Her parents discovered her body the following morning. An autopsy determined that it was a homicide, but the parents were not given answers to their inquiries. The National Institute of Forensic Medicine tentative ruled that Esmeralda Riches died as a result of a perineal laceration, extensive internal bleeding, and hemorrhagic shock following the violent act. The girl's death was classed as a violent death of unknown origin after the autopsy, but who dared to do it when Esmeralda was on a walk supervised by a teacher? Interviews with the girlfriends, as well as an analysis of the confiscated phones, provided clarity and helped to identify the first suspect. The statement of one of the girls who went out with the teacher and Esmeralda that evening was breathtaking. She claimed she witnessed the professor slip 5 tablets into Esmeralda's drink while they were on the beach. The police's first results also caused a lot of discussion in the Dominican Republic, where abortion is illegal. The cause of Esmeralda's death was widely speculated upon throughout the community. Some said she died of a heart attack, while others were certain she died from blood loss induced by the abortion pills John Kelly had given her. Everyone hoped that the medical examiner's findings would end the rumors and speculation. However, all conjecture died down once the forensic examination results were available. When Esmeralda's relatives learned the results of the forensic examination, which ruled out the possibility of pregnancy, they were plainly perplexed and skeptical. The victim's relatives expressed disappointment that the report ruled out Esmeralda's pregnancy because this idea best matched what investigators discovered based on the forensic examiner's tests and results, as well as the data gathered during the inquiry. After all, an examination of Esmeralda's classmates' phones found numerous text exchanges that, while indirect, indicated the teacher's long-term interest in the student. Following the unsuccessful pregnancy, the inquiry established that John Kelly drugged the girl without her knowledge and physically mistreated her on the beach, resulting in profuse blood loss and Esmeralda's death a few hours later. The results of multiple toxicological testing remain waiting. Given the ongoing investigation, the prosecutor's office requested a coercive measure against John Kelly Martinez and his suspected collaborator, Ruben Murillo Martinez, who are the primary suspects in the young woman's death. John Kelly Martinez was suspended from teaching for 90 days without pay because of the evidence gathered against him. The prosecutor's office requested a year of preventative custody for John Kelly, the primary suspect in Esmeralda's killing. Let me remind you that preventative detention is the imprisonment of a person for a period of time to prevent him or her from committing a crime. New episodes and interviews with witnesses concerning the student's death, however, have heightened interest in this horrible incident. Following multiple interrogations, investigators discovered that due to significant bleeding, the entire company had to stop several times along the road to assist her, but no one brought the bleeding Esmeralda to the hospital or contacted 911. Some of these stops were filmed by surveillance cameras, and according to witnesses, the defendants purchased alcoholic beverages and Esmeralda and John used the lavatory together. Later, they visited the drugstore to get medicine, water, and feminine hygiene pads. It was later discovered that Esmeralda had to change her clothes at one of the stops because her own were completely soaked in blood. After Esmeralda was carried home, her parents observed that she was bleeding profusely and assumed it was part of her menstrual cycle. So the mother merely gave her daughter a pain reliever to help her go to sleep. One of the girl's cell phones revealed that Esmeralda had sent her an audio message in the early morning hours requesting assistance and begging, "Please help me, I'm bleeding." Unfortunately, the friend did not listen to the help recording in time. The next day, Esmeralda was discovered gasping on the floor of her restroom, utterly bloodied. Police detained John Kelly Martinez on February 14th and searched his residence the next day, seizing the clothes he was wearing that night while out with his female students. Ruben Murillo, John's cousin and the second man that night, was also accused of attempting to cover John's bloodied trousers. There are numerous ambiguities in the inquiry regarding the incident. The prosecutor's office should have addressed the matter rather than spreading new rumors about an event that scared the public. The people wanted a thorough investigation to determine the true reason of the young girl's death. Many people thought that the investigation failed to take into consideration the obvious facts. This included not only searching the house where the instructor and his family lived, but also the car in which the crime against Esmeralda may have occurred, resulting in the bleeding. The authorities had urgently wanted the car, but it was quickly sold by John Kelly's wife. The inquiry concluded that the quick selling of the car was a means of concealing evidence that could establish violent activities. The car was purchased by Pontiac Pillier. When it became clear that a coercive measure would be sought for alleged cooperation in the case against J.C. Espinarajo, John Kelly's wife, and Frank Paniagua, the car's new owner, eventually checked the vehicle. But aside from traces of Esmeralda's blood in the automobile, no additional evidence was discovered. The court opinion decided that there was insufficient evidence to detain JC. Espino Regio was incarcerated but later released. The investigation lasted several months. The prosecutor initiated his own investigation and re-interviewed the three girls who accompanied Esmeralda, providing testimony that helped detectives piece together the events of that night minute by minute. 30 p.m., John Kelly Martinez, 35, and his cousin Ruben Murillo Martinez drove to Esmeralda Rich's home in La Otra Banda, Higüey, with three other girls in the car. John excused Esmeralda from her mother, introducing himself as her teacher and informing her about the great evening that awaited her daughter and the other students. Esmeralda went with him. It turned out that the entire group was supposed to go to the fair for amusement rides, but on the way, John changed his mind and changed the destination. Most likely, John Kelly did not want to attend the fair and instead selected a peaceful Macau beach. On his way to the beach, John stopped at a store to get a beer, and when he returned to the car, he ordered his brother to sit in the back seat while Esmeralda sat up front. The man had a thermos in which he poured the beer and added 5 mystery pills. He offered it to Esmeralda without telling her what was inside the thermos, but one of the girlfriends saw. When the three females arrived at the beach, they got out of the car, leaving Esmeralda and John Kelly alone. They were alone in the car for about 30 minutes, and Esmeralda's companions were aware of their prolonged absence. After a little silence, John emerged and instructed everyone to get in the car since they were leaving quickly. They had to make many stops along the route because Esmeralda was bleeding profusely. One of the pauses was at 9:45 a.m. when they pulled into a gas station parking lot and Esmeralda used the restaurant lavatory, according to eyewitnesses and surveillance footage. Esmeralda's classmates claimed she asked to stop at the petrol station because she needed to use the ladies' room, and when she entered with her companions, they discovered her clothes were wet with blood. There was a lot of blood in the lavatory, and the girls had to scrub the floor. The girlfriends sought to help Esmeralda. They were terrified and questioned the woman working at the petrol station whether it was usual. She responded it was not normal and recommended them to see a doctor right away. The girls informed John Kelly about the situation, but the guy refused to go to the hospital, claiming that doing so would land him in jail. According to the inspection report, traces of Esmeralda Rich's blood were discovered in both the parking lot and the service lavatory at the petrol station. They also stopped at a pharmacy about 10:21 p.m. They purchased some medication, water, and sanitary pads. To verify the facts, authorities got security footage as well as a purchase receipt. At 11 p.m., John Kelly returned Esmeralda to her house. She arrived with significant bleeding, which started minutes after she was left alone in the car with her teacher. On February 16th, an official report revealed that the girl had been cruelly and brutally assaulted, resulting in serious blood loss and hypovolemic shock. As frightening as it sounds, this condition might have been stabilized, and professionals know how to properly help a person. But Esmeralda never reached the life-saving hands of doctors that night. Toxicology testing verified the presence of the active substance in the pills used to terminate a pregnancy in Esmeralda's body, but it was previously determined that Esmeralda was not pregnant. This component is a synthetic gestagen having contraceptive properties when taken orally in the indicated dose regimen. This component inhibits ovulation and fertilization, implying that the teacher, John Kelly, was preparing for intimacy with the pupil he liked. Esmeralda's body was finally buried after several medical investigations. The small girl was interred at El Banao Public Cemetery. Esmeralda's relatives and friends say farewell to her. They characterized her as a sweet and joyful girl. Her parents regretted entrusting their daughter to a teacher and allowing her to go for an evening walk with him. On June 4, 2023, after reconstructing Esmeralda Rich's last hours, prosecutors charged math and physical education instructor John Kelly Martinez. On June 12, the La Altagracia prosecutor's office filed an indictment and a request for a trial against Martinez and his cousin, Rubio Muriel Martinez, before the La Altagracia Instructional Court. The case was set for hearing on August 23, 2023. However, due to the passing of Storm Franklin, the case against the teacher was rescheduled. On November 24, 2023, the judge ordered John's retrial as the single defendant in Esmeralda Rich's death. The trial was supposed to start on January 9, 2024, but it was rescheduled because only half of the witnesses were present. The trial is set for February 1 and 6, 2024, in the Collegiate Court of the Penitentiary Chamber of First Instance of L.A. Alta Gracia. The defense attorney encouraged the court to underline that his client can only be charged with violence, and he accused the parents of failing to do anything to prevent their daughter's death, despite knowing about her problem. The prosecution, for its part, produced almost 40 pieces of evidence, including witness statements and examination reports. Throughout the hearing, the prosecution also received testimony from doctors and forensic specialists who presented the audience all of the audio and video data gathered throughout the laborious and lengthy investigation into the girl's death. In his closing speech, the defendant attempted to portray himself as a victim. John Kelly Martinez admitted that he and Esmeralda were close that night in the car, but he truly attempted to tell the court and everyone there that everything was consensual. The essential thing, he continued, was that Esmeralda was still alive when he took her home. According to the motion to compel, Martinez voluntarily caused lacerations, abrasions, and contusions on the deceased, resulting in her death from severe acute external and internal bleeding and hemorrhagic shock, according to the postmortem report. John Kelly Martinez's remarks left little influence on the court or the audience. On March 14, 2024, 36-year-old Professor John Kelly Martinez was sentenced to 20 years in jail for violence. John Kelly Martinez will serve his prison sentence in the Anmu Correctional and Rehabilitation Center in Higuera. Rubio Murillo Martinez, the defendant's cousin accused with accessory after the fact, was granted a conditional enforcement order requiring frequent court attendance. Following the enforcement step against the professor and his cousin, Rich's family counsel, Raimundo Rosario, stated that the family was satisfied with the restraining order and will not make a move to reopen the investigation. Esmeralda's parents were somewhat relieved at the decision for John. They praised everyone who took part in the inquiry and trial. They also stated that they were satisfied with the verdict. Esmeralda's family did not rejoice at the teacher's decision because the severe grief of losing their daughter was forever etched in their souls. Eva Martinez, Esmeralda's mother, expressed guilt for letting her daughter stroll with this wonderful instructor and 3 friends. I questioned him over the phone, "Are you a teacher?" And he replied, "Yes, I am." And I implored him, "Take care of my daughter. I'm going to let her out since she's with you." I was unaware that my daughter was dating this man, the mother claimed. The Ministry of Education offered assistance to the family and relatives of the deceased girl, as well as the relatives of the other girls who were with Esmeralda on the day of the tragedy. In their message, they expressed their wish that similar incidents would not occur again in the educational community or in society as a whole. With the pain of parents who will never be able to accept their daughter's death, they stated that it is their turn to fight for justice. A fun evening outing to the beach turned into a night of dread that claimed the life of student Esmeralda Riches, who bled to death from lacerations, abrasions, and bruises inflicted by a guy whose parents had entrusted their children's lives. Obviously, everyone involved in the evening's outing shares some of the culpability. Unfortunately, because her parents were so strict, Esmeralda was afraid to seek their assistance and tell them what had happened. Agree, sometimes we believe it is easier to conceal for fear of punishment or simply to avoid being misunderstood. But what